So given the change in landscape, what is your hypothesis? Is this the end of the card as we know it, or where is it going?
Uh, no. There's a shift away from cash. I think that's undeniable. And there's a shift towards digitalization. So I think both of those factors support both card and account to account payments. But there are a significant number of use cases which actually really play to cards. So I think ultimately there will be certain scenarios where an account to account payment makes sense. And there'll be certain scenarios where a card payment makes sense. The other kind of magic jewel in the crown of cards is the whole process around refunds, disputes and charges. So if you make a purchase on your card, you're pretty much insured. And if there's an issue, you get the scheme will refund you back to when you make a payment on an instant account, the money's gone.
Welcome back to Purpose Driven FinTech. I am your host, Moni Millares. Today, we have the honor to speak with Jeff Parker, CEO at Paymentology. He takes us back to the core. We explore what is purpose, how Paymentology is having direct impact in customers' lives, even though they are a B2B FinTech. He emphasizes how we need to collaborate more and share ideas as a FinTech community for us to be able to have 10 times the impact in 5 years' time. Jeff is known as a great leader, so I dig deeper on his leadership style and what we can do as an industry to make it better for FinTechers. Paymentology is a card processor, so we explored the controversial question, is it the end of card payments? Or actually, are they the key for financial inclusion? We discuss how cards will evolve, and Jeff shares with us the key Paymentology capabilities he wished every FinTech product team knew about, and how Paymentology is reducing complexity and empowering FinTechs and brands to better serve their customers. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe in YouTube, follow, and leave a 5-star rating. Remember to connect in LinkedIn to keep the conversation going. Let's go for it. Hello, Jeff. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you very much for having me. A pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And actually, I forgot to say, I've heard really good things about you. So actually, not about you only as a leader, but as a professional, human as such. So really looking forward to this chat.
Thank you very much indeed. Hopefully I can live up to the expectation.
I'm sure you will. So just to get started, this podcast is all about how can we build a better world for everyone, because money is one of the top sources of stress for everyone these days, for a long time. So I want to start with, hey, what is your take on how do we build more purpose-driven FinTech?
It's a big question to start with, isn't it?
Yes.
Look, I think the concept of a purpose-driven FinTech is a really kind of valuable one. And I think that probably means different things to different people. But I guess for me, a purpose-driven FinTech or purpose-driven, any organization that's purpose-driven is looking at how do we impact society in a way which is more than just a P&L, more than just revenue and numbers, and can we positively make a difference on the environment or the community which we serve, and whether that's community, customers, or more broad than that. And so I guess if that's the context, how do we build more purpose-driven FinTechs? I think from my side, I guess the obvious place to start is what's the purpose? And we need to define as an organization, what's our purpose as a business? And so that's really clear, because I think until you articulate what that is, whether it's for you, whether it's for your stakeholders, your employees, et cetera, it's difficult to then, I guess, deliver on that. So the first thing would be define that clear purpose. Then I think you need to set a framework around that. So whether that's vision, values, goals, again, so that people can buy into it, because there can be many different purpose-driven organizations that have different purposes, and you or me will resonate with one, but we maybe not resonate with another. And that's okay. But I think the people that you want to hire into your business and the customers that you want to bring need to understand what your purpose is and decide if that's the purpose that they want to engage in. So I think once you set that as a framework, you then need to think about building that into everything that you do as an organization. So whether it's metrics, whether it's how you think about building your product, whether it's how you engage your kind of communities and stakeholders. And ultimately, I guess, it's how you measure whether you're achieving that. So the impact. And so I think if you think about all of those aspects together, and it needs to be more than just words on a wall. It needs to be driven from the top and lived and breathed every single day. Right. Most people work for either the purpose of their organization or for their manager. And so you need to be able to set that purpose clearly for them so that they can buy into it. But I think I think we're at the start of the journey on that. I think there's a lot more we can do as a culture to get better at driving that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really love the answer because of all the episodes that I've done, I think you're the first one that goes into, okay, let's go to the basics and define what's purpose. My very first episode in this podcast as we know it today, I brought an expert, a founder of Purpose Craft, where we use a whole hour to explore what is purpose, how did you do it, how did you measure it, blah, blah, blah. But then since then, it's the first time again that we have that conversation. We start by defining what is purpose, and it's not just the founder or the CEO that has this purpose, but it's like how everyone and then how it cascades down and how we measure it, full circle. So
And
love
there's
that.
no right or wrong. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And for Paymentology, the business I'm leading, the background of our business was very much driven and born out of South Africa. And so the purpose of that business is very much driven by having a positive impact and changing lives on the communities around that. But that may be completely different to someone else's purpose. And that's okay. You just need to be clear to your team. Yeah, what's your purpose and why?
Yeah. So can you expand on Paymentology? Like, can you bring that purpose to life?
Sure. So just by a bit of background, and I'll do it quickly not to bore people. Paymentology is an issuer processor. So we are the technology that sits between the card schemes and the person with the card. And we process some information and decide whether when you tap your card, whether it should work or not, whether it should be approved and declined. Our strategy or our mission is really to make it easy for businesses to launch and manage card programs globally. And we're really guided as a business by some fundamental core values that sit beneath us. And our purpose is to change lives and to drive financial inclusion. And I can go into that in a bit more detail because I think some people can think financial inclusion is a lofty aspiration for FinTech. So for us, it really does mean something. And I think it's important to think about the context. And then in terms of values as a business, we're like me, very simple. We have three key core values, which are make it simple, make it happen, and make it right. And, that should be just some core things which kind of drive the way that we operate on a day-to-day basis. But financial inclusion and changing lives is really core. It comes back to what I said, the ethos of, or the origin of the business being born out of South Africa and going into Africa, very much a kind of a developing economy. And we've been trying to be at the forefront of driving the shift of digitalization, the movement away from cash, and really giving access to millions of people that potentially haven't got access to what often many of us in the Western world think are basic rights in terms of access to financial services. Lots of our clients are receiving their salaries on their cards. They're getting access to credit or finance that they would never have had the opportunity before. So we are genuinely, in our mind, we believe that we're giving people a real step change in kind of their access to financial services. And that access to financial services, hopefully if used well, if educated well, if used safely, enables people to prosper and do more with their lives. And we've done that very much in partnership with our local community. So we're very involved in the local community. We sponsor local teams. We do lots of things with charity organizations, but really trying to educate the local community how they can use our products and services safely. It's very much over the last 20 years been embedded into the ethos of the company. And as we've grown globally into more countries, we've tried to take that culture with us. And I think our staff are deeply bought into our purpose and what we stand for, which has been amazing for me. I'm new to the company, so I can't take any credit for it, but it's been very humbling to see when I joined the organization.
Build on everything that you just said, because you sound like a neobank, let's say, founder, but you are a B2B company. You're a payment processor company,
Right.
which usually most people in the industry, we see payments processors as, just like the technology layer enabling the people who want to have direct impact in communities. But you see yourselves as having that direct impact as such. And I found that very interesting. So can you expand on the mindset on, as a B2B company, enabling all these other companies? How do you have that impact that you want to create?
Yeah, actually, so I never even thought about that, but it's a pretty good insight, at least from a personal perspective. Yes, we are B2B, but fundamentally, the way that we make our clients successful is to make them be successful and to make them be able to offer their kind of cardholders a valued product which people like. And so ultimately, in some ways, B2B is a really simple model. So we build a platform, we build a capability, and we sell it to our clients. If they're successful, we're successful. And so I guess we really need to put ourselves in the eyes of the customer as well as our customer, to make sure that we're delivering the right products and services that enable them to do what they think. And I think as a business, we very much moved to being more solution orientated rather than product orientated. So I need to very much understand my customer's problem. What's the issue that they're trying to solve? And if I'm thinking from that perspective, automatically I start to think about how I can impact them as an individual, and then how can I broadly more impact the communities. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but it's a very good point. But for me, it's super, super important that I understand the end customer and how we can support them, and ultimately how we can change their lives.
I love that. And then building on that, if basically we, as fintechs, as an industry, we're here to have impact in the end consumer. One of the challenges that I pose to myself and us as a community is, we as fintech industry, as we know it today, we've been around for 10 years, 12 years, and we have had impact. We've had a ton of impact. However, financial stress continues to be the number one or number two source of stress for everyone. The data points that we have in terms of savings rates of people across the world, inflation going up, like the problem statement keeps getting bigger. While our solutions have had impact, it's not big enough. So the question that I pose to ourselves as an industry is, what is it that we need to do today to have 5 or 10 times impact in 5 years' time? Not in 50, but like soon. What's your take?
Another big question. I think you actually mentioned a good point right at the start there, which I think is, I also feel an obligation to the fintech industry, let's say. I think maybe I don't know if that's unique for our industry or not, but it also gives me great pleasure to see other fintechs doing well, because I think there is so much that we can do together if we join forces, leveraging technology to drive better outcomes for our customers. And so working together in collaboration more effectively, being quite transparent with each other, even working closely with competitors, I think is super important. And ultimately, we are still very much a very small slither of the financial services sector. And what is it they say, right? A rising boat rises all tides or something. So that, if we can make the awareness bigger, then I think we can all be more successful and have a bigger impact. I think in terms of how do we have a 5 or a 10x impact, I think there's probably a few things. I think one is we need to continue to embrace and drive technology change and advancement. And I know we're doing that, and that's probably sounds obvious. Whether it's generative AI, which is obviously a very common thing at the word at the moment, but I think there's huge amounts that we can just continue to do to further improve lots of things, efficiencies, accuracy around things like fraud and credit assessments, etc., more tailored, personalized things. I think actually we need to prioritize financial inclusion. I think that sometimes fintechs are solving a problem that doesn't exist just for the sake of solving it. And I think we need to go back to the basics and say, what are the real problems? And let's solve them. in Europe, I don't need another solution on how to tap my card to get a digital payment to work more quickly because it already works. Like do I need QR codes in Europe? Maybe there's some advantage, but I'm not sure it's solving a real problem.
Yeah.
But if I can provide access to financial services to 2 billion people in Africa that actually is going to change their lives, then that's where we should be. That's where we can be focused. There are 3 or 4 million small businesses in the UK, which was one of the most developed countries in the world. They still don't get access to finance properly. They're still ignored by the banks. They still don't get credit assessed. So I think we need to really target and solve the real world problems. To that, I think to be successful, we need to foster a more collaborative environment. People need to work more closely together. The ecosystem needs to support each other. And we need a lot of help and support from regulations and from governments because I think that it's too protectionist at the moment. There's not enough real drive to help that. And I think if we can bring a kind of a collection of those things together while driving, I guess, the purpose forward, I think everyone can win. We're in business to make money ultimately at the end of the day. For a lot of people are. But I think if we focus on the other things, if we solve problems for customers, then the success follows it as an outcome.
Yeah, I like that. And okay, let's assume that in this world, we start working together, we help each other, and we focus on solving real problems. You use the right words. Probably I hadn't add the example to we've had impact, but just marginal impact. That's exactly what I meant.
Right.
In the UK, we don't need another payment solution. But anyways, we start making these changes. How do we know that we did have impact? What are the things that we could measure?
That is super interesting because I think that's probably still in a big world of debate in terms of, and I don't think it's an easy black or white answer. I think it's grey because there are nuances. So it's very easy for me to sit here and say, I want to provide 1 billion people in Africa with more credit. That isn't the right solution for a lot of people. That's giving more credit to something that's there's a financial well-being piece here. There's an education piece in there. I think we need to try and be clear up front as to what metrics we're trying to change and whether that's financial literacy. I think a lot of our problems are that the education system is completely broken. And actually it hasn't changed for 50 years. And so we're actually sending people out into the world unprepared for what's out there. They're not taught how to do household budgets. They're not taught how to manage finances. They're not taught the risks of getting into debt. And so actually fundamentally, that's probably where I would start if I had a magic wand. And I think that would take us to a much greater place, much faster. And actually, how are you going to drive a 10x impact? It's probably starting there in many ways to drive that. So it's a long answer. I probably haven't answered it properly, but I think we need to use data. We need to empower through education. We need to manage and help people understand the risks, so the downsides as well as the benefits, and then use some pragmatism and work together to improve that over time.
Yeah. So you mentioned education, and a few people have mentioned education before. But there's this skepticism that, let's say, our generation, even Gen Zs today, it's too late. We cannot change. Some people have said that, right? Like, it's too late. We cannot change. It would have to be the kids who are today 3, 5 years old. What's your take? Do you think we can change as younger, or adults as such, or it will be like not in our generation, but just the kids who will see this impact if we focus on education?
I don't know which of your esteemed guests have said that we're too late, and so I don't want to necessarily say that they're wrong, but I think we're doing ourselves a massive disservice if we're saying that we can't make this change ourselves. I think I'm a very positive mindset person. I think if we set our mind to it, we can do anything. Like I think, yes, obviously over time it gets more effective, and yes, maybe the next generation is going to be in a better place for us, but there is so much that we can do over the next 5 or 10 years to improve this. And whether that's education is probably a longer term piece, but there's huge amounts that we can do in terms of tools and alerts and more simple education to drive some of this stuff. And even just around, I think better data insights and management and algorithms, etc., will enable us just to better match products and services to individuals. And so we can more accurately predict whether a product is safe for this person or not safe for them. And then that's where I think the ethics and morality come into it as well, that we have to go beyond the short term, just profit impact. We have a moral obligation, I think, if we're providing what's potentially dangerous products to customers, if used incorrectly. We have an obligation to the best of our ability to give them access to these services, but in a way which is safe and that they can learn over time. So I think we can definitely make an impact in the short term.
Yeah, I like your positive mindset. Of course, I'm on the positive mindset camp too. So I like that. I believe, many of us believe this. Of course, people in the industry, the FinTechers, they are a huge part of this change. How do we help FinTechers more to bring the best out of who they are and how they contribute?
How do we help FinTechers do more? And by FinTechers, you mean how do we make them have more of an impact on society, or how do we?
How do we help our people, our FinTechers, everyone working in FinTech, be the best version of themselves, be happy, productive, high achievers, driven, engaged, the dream, the dream high achievers that we have.
I think part of that is maybe this is going even deeper. Maybe I just talk about it for myself.
Yeah.
I think there's a clear correlation to my performance at work and my achievements with my fulfillment and satisfaction outside of work. And so as I got married or had kids or took a different view on the importance of work and career, I think it freed me mentally to think differently. And as I've got older, I've got 3 young daughters. As they became a more and more important part of my life, and I got probably a more rounded outlook on what's important, I think that helped me. So my global statement of this would be, there's more to life than work. And that if you can find other things which fulfill you and inspire you and entertain you, whether that's friends, family, hobbies, etc., I'm a big believer that side of things and having a healthy mind and a healthy physical state will help you do better in terms of work, because you think through things more creatively, more innovatively, more collaboratively. And then I think more practically, I think we need to think about a fintech support network. I think we are not bad. We are pretty good at it, I think, but we can get better in terms of what's the right networks that we can create, the right communications or conversations that we can have to help, right, and share ideas. I think even if I just think about within my world, I think most of my success has been around building good teams who are much smarter than I am. And my role is really to bring those together, give them direction and remove their roadblocks so they can go and do what they do well. If you expand that to the next level, I think it's the same as an industry. How do we come together as an industry and think about surrounding ourselves with people that are smarter than us with different experiences, and how do we solve some of these problems together? Which comes back to that whole point, I think, what you said. I think fintech is quite an inclusive community, and we are only a small part of the financial services piece. And so we should be motivated to come together and work. And I think there's lots of opportunities for us to share ideas more effectively and maybe co-collaborate on some of the problems. Co-create,
Yeah. That's a very good point. So continuing on the people's topic, some of the people who work with you, they say that you're a really good leader. Like, people look up to you. So what's your leadership style? Like, what makes you a good leader?
Firstly, that's very nice to hear. A little bit strange sometimes to hear, but thank you. I don't think I have anything unique. I think I'm very true to who I am. A bit like when we talked about purpose, I think there are multiple different leadership styles that exist, and there aren't necessarily right or wrong. There are certain attributes that are right and wrong, but as a general rule, not all successful leaders lead in the same way. So I
Mhm.
think as long as you're very clear about what your leadership style is, then the people that work with you and engage with you can decide whether that's a leadership style which resonates with them and they want to be a part of. And if it's not, that's fine. But they should go find a leadership style which is more suited. My style is very, I think, as I mentioned, is very open, transparent, and collaborative. I am what is what you get. I'm the same person at work as I am at home. And I consciously do that. And I know that some people consciously don't do that. I believe that my strengths are bringing teams together and setting very clear kind of vision and direction in terms of where we want to go as an organization, but then giving a lot of autonomy to people to be able to go and execute and use their own skills and proactiveness to do that. And that really my main role once that's set is to help them remove their roadblocks and let them be successful. But my virtual door is open 100% of the time to every single person in the organization, any time of day, and really I'm just here to help them. So that's how I've always been. That's true to my values as an individual. And hopefully that resonates with some people. And I actually, I would unofficially like to show that nice people can be successful as well. I, I,
Yeah.
I think I'm a positive person. I think I try and help other people. And I think there's always been this rhetoric, especially maybe in the 80s and 90s, that to be a leader, you have to be a bit like blunt and cold and direct. And I just don't believe it.
Cool. So it's very refreshing to see to acknowledge that there's many different types of leadership styles and both be authentic to your style and then as an employee, like work with whatever works best for you. If not, then move on. There's a diversity of leadership styles. That's very refreshing to see. And also it's very refreshing to hear from someone that it's like nice people. But it's true. It's like nice people are also good leaders, CEO level, right? It's not just like, oh, it's a nice team lead. No, it's a CEO level good leader.
I was talking about, I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago on something different, but there was a bit topic and it occurred to me and I said that I don't have a fear of failure.
Hmm.
I have a fear of not reaching my potential.
Okay.
And so my style is to constantly push myself as much as anyone else to try and be the best that I can be. But if one day I wake up and I get told that you can't go any further, you're not good enough to go any further, that's okay. I'm okay with that. I just want to have done everything I can to have achieved what I can. I guess that feeds into my leadership style. I want to give the opportunities for my team to do the best work of their lives with Paymentology. And I want to do everything that I can to give them the opportunity to fill their dreams and aspirations within our organization. Hopefully we can do that. And if not, then that's okay. They can go somewhere else, but hopefully they want to stay with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for you. It's like it's a nice ethos as such. Okay. So we'll move on to paymentology as such. So you are a payments processor.
Yep.
There's tons of payment processors today. But also, the world has changed in the past, not even 10 years, in the past 5 years. Card used to be the main payment method, same with cash. But now, let's say in Asia, we have QR payments everywhere. In Europe, we have now account to account payments. So, given the change in landscape, what is your hypothesis? Is this the end of the card as we know it, or where is it going?
No. So my background prior to processing, I spent about 10 years in cross-border remittance, fintech businesses, and account-to-account payments. And I was in this bubble, and apologies for any listeners that are going to vehemently disagree, but I was in this bubble that we taught the rhetoric that cards were a dying breed and that everything was going to go to account, and you build your own banking network and move funds. I think when I moved into the card processing space, it was actually quite a shock at how innovative the card industry is and actually how much of the problems that account-to-account payments are trying to solve, that card payments can actually solve more easily. So I'm a big believer that actually, though, there's a shift away from cash. I think that's undeniable. And there's a shift towards digitalization. So I think both of those factors support both card and account-to-account payments. But there are a significant number of use cases which actually really play to cards. A good example, as I said, is we have a large number of customers around the world that pay salaries onto cards. Even in the developed countries, there's millions of people that are underbanked or unbanked. They don't have access to full bank accounts. So actually being able to give them a prepaid card, for example, is actually a significant development from where they can on cash. As actually, cards solve the problem that an account-to-account proposition can't do. And while there is a movement towards real-time instant payments on the account-to-account, it's a long way away in reality. There are different networks that have it and different countries, but I think there's still lots of kind of transactions which are instant, especially in the kind of B2B space. And I think the card rails that exist are much more sophisticated and can do instant payments. A lot of the mobile wallets that you talked about, especially in this part of the world, are all actually backed by a card underneath it. So yes, there are QR payments in Asia, but a lot of the wallets that we're using here are all actually have a card underneath. And actually, when you put the card beneath the wallet, it almost becomes invisible. And so actually to the consumer, they don't know whether they're using a card or an account-to-account. So it's actually the wallet on top of it. I think some of the changes that we're seeing with the QR payments, we're actually starting to see that some of those networks introduce card payments into their wallets as well from acceptance perspective. So real-time account-to-account payments are great for certain pieces, but you don't get the near 100% acceptance rates that you get with the card scheme. So I think ultimately there will be certain scenarios where an account-to-account payment makes sense, and there'll be certain scenarios where a card payment makes sense. The other kind of magic jewel of the crown of cards is the whole process around refunds, disputes, and charges, etc. So if you make a purchase on your card, you're pretty much insured, and if there's an issue, you get the scheme will refund you back to. When you make a payment on an instant account, the money's gone. From a fraud perspective, which I think is that's one of the biggest headwinds to digitalization and acceptance over the next 5 to 10 years. I think, and maybe I should have mentioned that when you said, how do we 5X this? We need to solve the fraud problem. And I think cards are much better placed at this point of evolution to manage fraud much more effectively. I think that's a massive. So I think both have a future, but I'm very confident that cards will continue to
continue. So cards will continue, and then they will evolve next to account payments.
I think so.
Then, yeah. And then the key word that I just said is they will evolve. So what do you think they will evolve to?
I think in general, for all of these things, you're going to get a much greater level of tailorization or personalization, whether that's through the end user experience or through the kind of products and services that are offered, which are driven by data. And so I think that's what companies like ours are really powerful in enabling. If you look at all the traditional card processes, they're on legacy technology. They're quite simple and standard in terms of what they do, and they serve a small set of use cases. I think what we do, being cloud-based, much more API-driven, like API first, we effectively create a very rich layer of APIs that our customers can ingest and create user solutions however they want. So whether they're doing expense management, whether they're doing payroll, whether they're a neobank, whether a telco, whether they're doing marketplace payouts, it's the same set of APIs that they use, but they package those APIs differently so that they can create different user experiences. And I think that's really powerful. And I think that in the future, it will evolve into being, and so as a result of that, you've seen whole businesses are built on very small segments of use cases. And I think that's going to continue to evolve. And that's how it will evolve into these specialists using data, whether it's fraud analytics, whether it's assessing credit, whether it's using machine learning in different ways, we'll be able to create much more targeted solutions for either individuals or businesses that is much more powerful and enriching for the consumer. And I think we'll see a big increase in like the whole concept around rewards and loyalty. Yeah, we've seen for a long time how important rewards and loyalty are, like in the airline industry are, for example, and increasingly that's moving into other sectors. And I think embedded finance is a big kind of propellant of that. Brands really want embedded finance to create engagement and loyalty. And I think cards and the way that cards evolve will be focused a lot around engagement and loyalty, especially on the credit side.
Okay. So you just talked a lot about different ways in which it will evolve. So I'm assuming that a company like Paymentology would have the capabilities for us to basically build these innovative solutions. So what are I guess like I'm coming from a perspective of, let's say, a product team on your client side. Sometimes we look at companies like Paymentology and others, and the people who are assessing these companies, it's a big team, right? It's people from different departments. And what I see, the common thread whenever we assess any of these solutions is we are not the experts, right? So sometimes we don't know, oh, you have these capabilities that we don't know what we don't know. So
Correct.
what are the capabilities that you as Paymentology have that you wish that the product teams and the decision makers and the fraud teams, like the teams in the banks or other institutions, that you wish that they knew about, that it's like, hey, we're the best because we have A, B, C, D capabilities?
There's a couple of bits there that I think are worth touching on. So I think before I get into your statement around the product teams of other businesses don't know what they don't know is actually is real. It's very real. Whether you're a legacy bank looking at creating a new experience for your business, whether you're creating a neobank, or whether you're a very small startup looking to create a card program, or a brand like a Nike that wants to introduce a card solution to their things, they'll have very different levels of knowledge around payments and cards. And actually putting a card program together is quite complex. We've just done a piece of work. We think there's probably about 12 kind of core modules, let's say, or capabilities to launch a program. And that's obviously issuer processing, that's the BIN sponsorship, but there's things like fraud, KYC, AML, disputes handling, customer support, tokenization if I want it in Apple Pay or Google Pay, card fulfillment if I want a physical card, potentially a front-end mobile app. So all of those things together are quite complex. If you go to the market today, in the main, there are very few people that package that together. So that business has to go and contract and find 11 different suppliers to do all of those different pieces, negotiate all of those deals separately, manage all of those relationships, and put them all together. So the first thing in Paymentology we want to do is to get rid of all that complexity. We want to be the one interface between the client and all of those. So we will then we will go do all the hard work of creating, either building ourselves or partnering with third parties that can bring all of those components together. So if they only have to deal with one partner, one client, it's a lot easier for them to launch and manage card programs globally. So that's, I think, the first thing that we want to do. The second thing, I think, which is what sets us apart, is the fact that we are cloud native. And what do I mean by cloud native? I mean that we're built from the ground up to be in the cloud. So we're API first. We're cloud agnostic. So as a client of ours, you can be in AWS, you can be in Azure, you can be in Oracle, you can be in multiple locations. So we've got clients in 45 countries. It's one single platform, one single integration. So regardless of where you want to launch, it's effectively, it's configuration really rather than development to go into those new markets. And I think that, and also you can choose whether you want a shared or a dedicated instance. Some like banks will want their own kind of set of infrastructure. Other people are less bothered. And actually we're quite unique in that we've actually integrated into the local switch networks of some countries. So for example, in the Philippines, while Visa and MasterCard are great, the local switch bank net is very important. And so you can actually do both of those with us. And I think that's quite rare. So We're
Yeah.
integrated to MARDA in Saudi Arabia, JoeNet in Hong Kong, BankNet in the Philippines. I think there's 6 or 7 countries where we're integrated into the local networks, which I think we're probably very unique in terms of having that. And then the other piece I think is just around education and us helping our clients to understand how they can use the APIs which we expose more effectively to create the user experiences that they want. We recently bought, or a year or two ago, a business called Mia Wallet, which is, I think, at least in our mind, the world's leading kind of tokenization business as well. So we're very good in terms of putting that virtual card into Google Pay, Samsung Pay, Apple Pay. And there's a huge value in that, I think, in that it allows, as regulation changes, it will allow our clients to open up their own wallet within the phone as well. So they get more control over the customer and the experience. So there are probably a few things, but it's very dependent on the customers. We need to understand their problems and their client base as to how we can meet their
Yeah.
needs.
So what I'm hearing, to summarize that, is the neobanks that we started 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's been hard work to put everything together because, like you said, we had to go and meet
Right.
11 partners. And now, if anyone is starting a neobank or an established institution wants to roll out their embedded finance solution and offer a card or financial services product as such, it's way easier because you have the platform to enable it, and then we can just focus on, hey, what's coming back to purpose at the beginning? What's your purpose for your customers? What problem are you trying to solve? And then we find a way to do it, because sometimes building this from scratch, each integration from scratch, just takes time and
It
resource.
takes their focus away from what's their core business.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Cool. I like that. Because sometimes I say, like, when people are like, oh, I want to get into fintech, and many people think it's very sexy. I always say, it's not. It is hard work. Like, it is difficult. It's tough. And they say, why? And I always say, because it's complex. It's just because of that. It is complex and everything is interrelated. So you're removing the pain point of it is still complex, but it's less complex than doing it on your own.
I think the regulatory environment of payments is what really surprises people on how complex it is, because everyone who's been in tech, but not financial services tech, thinks they can do all of these things really quickly. And then they suddenly come in and they're like, oh, I can't do that because of this. And oh, I need to ID someone. And so, yeah, I think once you get under the hood, it becomes a bit more complex.
Yeah, it does. Cool. Okay, so as we're getting towards the end of the episode, there is one question that I love asking every guest at the end, which is, if you could change one thing, it's just one thing in the industry that could have the most impact to customers, colleagues, and shareholders, what could that be?
It's quite a good end question, because it brings us back in a full circle, I think, to where we started. I think for me, financial inclusion and solving real problems are really the essence as to the power that fintech has. And so the one thing that I would change, or I would maybe not change, because I think it would double down on the focus, is genuinely looking at how we can use the technology and the capabilities that we have as an industry together to drive better outcomes for our customers. And I think a lot of that is through financial inclusion. And that can either be access to services that they never had access to before, or it can be simply access to more suited products and services that are better meet their needs, as opposed to trying to force a product onto a customer. Let's understand the customer and what their requirements are, and deliver them and serve them a product which meets their needs. And I think increasingly we're getting more able to do that effectively. And that's when I think you see the real power of what we're trying to do.
I love it. Thank you, Jeff. It's been
Thank
a
you.
fascinating conversation. Thank you for
Very
joining us
much
in the show. Okie dokie. Everyone, thank you so much, and see you next week. Ciao, ciao.